The day I fired the woman I loved was the hardest day of my life. Amelia stood there, tears in her eyes, thinking I was destroying her career. She had no idea I was about to drop to one knee and ask her to be my wife instead. Brothers, what I'm about to share will change how you think about love, timing, and taking the biggest risks of your life. If you've ever been afraid to tell someone how you really feel, this story is for you. Hit that like button and buckle up for a journey that proves love conquers everything. My name is Ryan, and 3 years ago I was just another tech billionaire who thought success was measured only in dollars and market share. I had built my company from a garage startup to a Fortune 500 empire, but I was lonely. Successful, yes. Happy? That's debatable. I lived in a penthouse that felt more like a museum than a home, drove cars that cost more than most people's houses, and went to bed every night wondering if this was all there was to life. That changed the day Amelia walked into my office. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a rainy Tuesday morning in October, and I was interviewing candidates for my new executive assistant. My previous assistant had just left to start her own business, and I needed someone who could keep up with my demanding schedule. I'd already seen 12 people that morning, and honestly, I was getting frustrated. Nobody seemed to have the right combination of intelligence, professionalism, and that indefinable something that makes a person truly exceptional. Then she knocked on my door. Amelia entered with this quiet confidence that immediately caught my attention. She wasn't the most formally dressed candidate I'd seen that day, but something about her presence filled the room. She had these warm brown eyes that seemed to see right through all my carefully constructed walls, and when she smiled, it was genuine. Not the practiced, eager-to-please smile I'd seen all morning, but something real. "Mr. Ryan," she said, extending her hand, "I'm Amelia Johnson. Thank you for this opportunity." Her handshake was firm, her voice steady, and when I started asking her the usual interview questions, her answers surprised me. She didn't just tell me what she thought I wanted to hear. When I asked about her biggest weakness, instead of giving me some rehearsed answer about being too much of a perfectionist, she said, "I sometimes care too much about the people I work with." I know that might seem unprofessional, but I believe that when you genuinely care about someone's success, you'll work harder to help them achieve it. I hired her on the spot. Looking back now, I think I fell in love with her that very first day, but I was too stubborn and too focused on maintaining my professional image to admit it. Amelia started working for me the following Monday, and within a week she had completely transformed not just my office, but my entire approach to business. She wasn't just organizing my calendar and answering my emails. She was challenging my decisions, offering insights I'd never considered, and somehow managing to make even the most stressful days feel manageable. When I had a particularly difficult board meeting coming up, she'd stay late to help me prepare, asking the hard questions that my yes men executives were too afraid to ask. But it wasn't just her professional competence that drew me to her. It was the little things. The way she always remembered to order my coffee exactly how I liked it, even though I'd never specifically told her my preferences. The way she'd leave encouraging, sticky notes on my computer when she knew I was dealing with particularly challenging negotiations. The way she genuinely celebrated our victories, not because it was her job, but because she truly cared about our success. As the months passed, our working relationship evolved into something deeper. We started having longer conversations that went beyond business. I learned that she was working on her MBA at night, that she sent money home to help support her younger brother through college, and that she volunteered at a local literacy center on weekends. She learned that despite all my success, I was actually pretty insecure about a lot of things, that I missed my late parents every single day, and that I had terrible taste in movies but somehow always managed to pick restaurants with amazing food. The late nights at the office became something I looked forward to rather than endured. There's something magical about a quiet office building after everyone else has gone home. It was during those hours that Amelia and I really got to know each other. We'd order takeout and spread the containers across my conference table while we worked on presentations or reviewed quarterly reports. She'd laugh at my terrible jokes, and I'd find myself making more of them just to hear that sound. I started noticing things about her that I probably shouldn't have been noticing as her boss. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, The way her eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams of one day starting her own consulting firm. The way she hummed softly to herself when she thought no one was listening. But I also noticed something else. I was falling for her, and it terrified me. You have to understand, I'd never been in love before. Not really. I'd had relationships, sure, but they were mostly with women who were attracted to my wealth or my status. They wanted the lifestyle I could provide, not the man I actually was. With Amelia, it was different. She saw me on my worst days when I was frustrated or disappointed or just plain exhausted, and she never made me feel like I had to be anyone other than myself. The problem was our company policy. Like most major corporations, we had strict rules about relationships between supervisors and their direct reports. It wasn't just about avoiding lawsuits or maintaining professionalism. I genuinely believed in those policies because they protected people from being taken advantage of. But suddenly, those rules felt like prison bars, keeping me away from the one person who made me feel truly alive. For months, I wrestled with my feelings. I'd lie awake at night thinking about her, then spend the next day trying to maintain professional distance. It was torture. I watched her date other men, and each time she mentioned going out with someone new, it felt like a knife to my chest. But what could I say? I was her boss. I couldn't exactly confess my feelings and put her in the impossible position of having to choose between her job and rejecting her superior. The breaking point came during our annual company retreat last spring. We were in Napa Valley and the entire executive team was staying at this beautiful resort. On the last night, there was a company dinner and dancing. I watched Amelia from across the room, laughing with colleagues, looking absolutely radiant in a navy blue dress that made my heart stop. One of our regional managers, a guy named Tom, who I'd always thought was decent enough, asked her to dance. She said yes, and as I watched them together on the dance floor, something inside me snapped. Not with anger, but with clarity. I realized that I could spend the rest of my life regretting not telling her how I felt, or I could find a way to do something about it. That night, I barely slept. I paced my hotel room trying to figure out how to handle this situation. I couldn't ask her out while she worked for me. That would be inappropriate and unfair to her. But I also couldn't imagine continuing to work with her day after day, loving her in secret, watching her build a life that didn't include me. By morning, I had made my decision. It was crazy, risky, and could backfire spectacularly, but it was the only plan that gave both of us a real chance at happiness. I was going to fire her, but not the way you think. Over the next few weeks, I carefully planned every detail. First, I had to find her another job, one that would be a significant step up from her current position and pay her more than she was making as my assistant. I reached out to 3 CEOs I knew personally, all of whom ran companies where Amelia's skills would be highly valued. I couldn't tell them exactly why I was recommending her so strongly, but I made it clear that any company would be lucky to have her. Within 2 weeks, all 3 had extended her job offers. Perfect. Next, I had to buy a ring. This might sound strange, but I'd never bought an engagement ring before, and I had no idea what I was doing. I spent hours researching diamonds and settings, reading articles about the 4 Cs, and trying to figure out what style would suit her personality. Eventually, I went to a family-owned jewelry store in downtown, where an elderly man named Samuel helped me design something custom. It wasn't the biggest diamond in the store, but it was perfect for her. Elegant, classic, with just a hint of vintage charm that matched her style. The hardest part was waiting for the right moment. For weeks, I carried that ring box in my jacket pocket, waiting for my courage to catch up with my convictions. Every time I looked at Amelia, every time she smiled at me or we shared one of our private jokes, I almost chickened out. What if she said no? What if I'd misread all the signs? What if she thought I was crazy for throwing away our professional relationship on the chance that we might have something more? But then I'd remember that night at the company retreat, watching her dance with someone else, and I knew I had to try. The day I chose was a Friday evening in late June. Most of the office had already left for the weekend, but Amelia was still there, finishing up some reports that didn't really need to be done until Monday. That was just like her, always going above and beyond, always making sure everything was perfect. I called her into my office around 7 o'clock. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. I'd practiced this speech 100 times in my mirror at home, but suddenly every word I'd planned to say disappeared from my mind. Please sit down, I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. She sat, looking at me with those warm brown eyes, completely trusting, completely unaware that I was about to turn both of our worlds upside down. Amelia, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. You've been working for me for almost 3 years now. She nodded, smiling slightly. It's been the best job I've ever had. Those words almost broke my resolve. The best job she'd ever had, and I was about to take it away from her. But I forced myself to continue. In that time, you've been the most dedicated, intelligent, and capable assistant I've ever worked with. You've made my life easier in countless ways, and you've made this company better just by being part of it. Her smile widened a bit. She probably thought I was leading up to a raise or a promotion, which is why what I'm about to say is going to be so difficult. I took a deep breath. Amelia, you're fired. The change in her expression was immediate and heartbreaking. The smile disappeared, replaced by shock, confusion, and then hurt. I watched as tears began to well up in her eyes, and it took everything in me not to take it back right then and there. I, I don't understand, she whispered. Did I do something wrong? Because if I did, please just tell me and I'll fix it. I thought we were... You didn't do anything wrong, I interrupted quickly. You've been perfect. That's not why I'm letting you go. She stood up then, trying to maintain her dignity, even as tears started rolling down her cheeks. I see. Well, I suppose I should clean out my desk then. Amelia, wait. Please sit down. I'm not finished. Something in my tone must have gotten through to her because she sat back down, though she was clearly struggling to keep herself composed. You're fired as my assistant, I continued, my heart hammering against my ribs. Because I can't be your boss anymore. I can't continue to be your supervisor when what I really want is to be so much more than that. Confusion flickered across her face. I don't understand what you mean. I stood up then, walking around my desk to stand in front of her. My hands were shaking as I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the small velvet box that had been living there for weeks. What I mean is that I've been in love with you for over 2 years, and I can't pretend anymore that this is just a professional relationship for me. I dropped to one knee right there in my office, opening the box to reveal the ring that I hoped would represent our future together. Amelia Johnson, you're fired as my assistant because I'm hoping you'll accept a different position. Will you marry me? For a moment, the world seemed to stop. She stared at me in complete shock, her mouth slightly open, tears still streaming down her face, but for entirely different reasons now. I held my breath, waiting for her answer, terrified that I'd ruined everything. Then she started laughing. Not mean laughter, but the kind of joyful, disbelieving laughter that bubbles up when life surprises you in the most wonderful way. You're insane, she said, shaking her head but smiling through her tears. You're completely insane. Is that a yes? I asked, still on one knee, still holding the ring, still terrified, but now also hopeful. You fired me so you could propose to me? I fired you so I could love you the way you deserve to be loved, without any concerns about professional boundaries or company policies getting in the way. She looked down at the ring, then back at my face, and I saw the exact moment when she realized that this wasn't some elaborate joke or misunderstanding. This was real. I was really here, really proposing, really offering her my heart. Ryan, she said softly, I've been in love with you too. For so long. I thought I was crazy, thinking my boss might actually care about me as more than just an employee. So is that a yes? I asked again, hope blooming in my chest. Yes, she whispered. Yes, you beautiful crazy man. Yes, I'll marry you. I slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, and then I was kissing her, really kissing her, for the first time. It was everything I'd imagined and more. She tasted like the mint tea she always drank in the afternoon, and she felt perfect in my arms, like she'd always belonged there. When we finally broke apart, she looked down at the ring on her finger, turning her hand so the diamond caught the light from my office windows. It's beautiful, she said, but I have one condition. Anything. I want to finish out my 2 weeks' notice. I don't care if we're engaged now. I'm not leaving you without proper transition time. That would be unprofessional. I threw back my head and laughed. Only you would worry about proper notice when I just proposed to you. Well, someone has to maintain standards around here, she said, grinning. We were married 6 months later, in a ceremony that was everything I'd never known I wanted. Simple, elegant, surrounded by the people we loved most. Amelia looked absolutely radiant in her wedding dress, and when she walked down the aisle toward me, I finally understood what all those love songs were talking about. Today, 2 years later, she's not just my wife, she's my business partner, my best friend, and the love of my life. We've restructured the company so that she's now our chief operating officer, making decisions and leading teams with the same intelligence and grace she brought to managing my calendar. She finished her MBA, just like she'd planned, and her insights have helped our company grow in ways I never could have achieved alone. People sometimes ask me if I regret taking such a big risk, if I ever worry that mixing business with pleasure was a mistake. The answer's simple. Loving Amelia was never a risk. It was the smartest business decision I ever made because it brought me a partner who makes every aspect of my life better. She still leaves me encouraging sticky notes sometimes, but now they're on our bathroom mirror at home instead of my computer at work. She still challenges my decisions and asks the hard questions, but now she does it as an equal rather than an employee. And every morning when I wake up next to her, I'm grateful all over again that I found the courage to fire the best assistant I ever had so I could marry the love of my life. Men, if this story moved you, if you believe in fighting for love against all odds, smash that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that real love is worth every risk. And remember, the woman of your dreams might be closer than you think. Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards. Until next time, keep believing in love and never be afraid to go after what makes your heart beat faster.